Please remain seated.
Hello, Daniele.
Hello.
Thank you very much for
Thanks for
joining
having
us.
me.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you. Beautiful weather in Cannes. We would like to share and to get a chance to have your experience about the job of DIT on set with all the production you've been working on. Can you start by explaining a bit how in your career you arrived to this role?
Well, I don't want to go too far back, but it started when I was very young. A passion for cameras in general, film cameras, still cameras, then video cameras. Then I had the chance when I was still young in college to test some of the first cine cameras, like the Sony F900. We were slowly switching from the old beloved film to the digital sensors and the whole baggage that comes with it, which is the whole post-production and whatnot. So, cut to my American experience, that's when the whole thing exploded. The reason why is because, as we all know, the digital cameras, had big success. When I was in the US, I started to experiment even more because there's a lot of experimentation when it comes to these cameras as far as like testing their limits and see how far you can go one way or the other and also picking the right tool for the right project. So I really didn't aim to be a DIT. It just happened when Dante Spinotti, a cinematographer that probably few people know, asked me to collaborate on a project in Italy after I was working already with him as an editor on a different project. So he asked me if I was interested to try it out. That was quite a long time ago, but that was around the time in which we were starting to color grade on set. Well, the whole point was to be able to give Dante or a cinematographer like Dante the vision that was the closest to the final vision of what you were aiming to shoot. So, in other words, you're shooting a scene and you see on the monitors, which are calibrated and this and that, you see an image that is pretty much as intended. There's a lot of reason why that position, my position exists, and I feel like it is actually a key position because if it's well executed, that's what we try to do, is very helpful to the production, and you get to a point in which the directors, even like not just the DP but the director or the producers, actually kind of are grateful.
Do you recognize that the DIT job also fits to maybe production that are with less ambition or maybe with a smaller crew?
Oh,
maybe in some case even to the level of some documentary style?
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah?
I had the pleasure to work on $1 million project and on a $600 million project within a year or so. There's a huge difference between a sizable project and with unlimited budget and let's say a music video. But the knowledge that comes into it is helpful either way. The good thing about the American industry is that the union and the way we are organized is very efficient. So we are very protective of our position. The union is as well. And when it comes down to creativity, it's like an orchestra where the trumpet player plays the trumpet, the violinist plays the violin, and so forth. And that's what happened in American production. So you have an orchestra of super professional people that are super specialized in specific tasks or professions or skills. The idea is that what you get is the best of the best.
And could you tell us, in your relation with the DP, what amount of work is done and what kind of thing you discuss beforehand in the pre-production stage, and what really is the level of work and adaptation that you have to do on set? How does it balance?
There is some preparation involved, and it can go way back months before production, or it can, in a case of a commercial, it can be a day or two. Some DPs like to work with reference stills, so they give you some references or like a mood book, and they give you an idea of what they're going for, so you know they want to go for that specific look. It varies according to the DP, because each DP that I work with they have very different approaches, and you can't find really
a pattern,
a pattern, and I like all of that because I feel like they all have their way of getting what they want. When it comes down to work on set, though, it's all a matter of trust. In other words, I work with DP that I've been working for years, and we don't even talk. It just happens, you know? Even some new DPs that I work with, within 2-3 days, there's an amount of trust, you end up not talking that much. Okay. And when I say it's like this, the images speak for itself. So they're looking at calibrated monitors, they see what they're getting. So between the DP and the DIT, there has to be trust. Okay. Sometimes the DP, in my opinion, has so much on his plate or her plate that does not really have time or energy or can focus on stupid things like what ND I'm going to use right now. Each DP feels comfortable until a certain point. There are some of them that really want to have complete control, and I think it's great. But at the same time, I feel like they're losing a secret weapon that can be me or a colleague of mine that can really take care of a lot of clerical stuff. And not only clerical, because we can come up with ideas. We have more side time to think about what's going to happen next, or like what's the best camera for that shot, or like why would we use those lenses. If you get to that level of trust, then you can make suggestions that go kind of beyond what what compression we should use. It all comes down to like what's the best
more into the creative process.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent.
And though we talked a lot, which makes a lot of sense, about the backbone of the relation between the DP and the DIT, are you also interacting with other key stakeholders of the set, the gaffer, the makeup artist, the production designer? How does it work, this DOT job, all this crew?
Well, I can tell you that definitely happens, and the more that happens, the better it is. I mean, there's like tons of side conversations that happen between me and the gaffer, especially if there's a gaffer that is technical. And we never really bore the DP with all that conversation. So he doesn't even know what's happening. But we tweak LED lights to fit specific color space needs that we have. We do tests, even silly tests like checking flicker of like, these are all things that, when you don't do it, then you have to deal with the consequences. So we try to take that burden off of the DP. So on big sets like Marvel movies, there's a lot of that involved. And the reason why is because the standard is so high and the amount of visual effects involved is so high that you have to be aware of every little detail because it's gonna come on the screen, and the screen usually it's not small. Well, it's just big IMAX screens or 4K
and
displays.
I imagine that people from VFX and pre-visualization, etc., they also interact with you.
Oh yeah, I mean I have a tent. Depending on the size of the project, it can be 10 by 10. Blackout tent which pops out and closes really fast, so we can move really fast. It's completely dark. You enter, it's pitch black. If you don't have that element of environment, you can't judge anything. So in that tent, we have the key grip, but normally we would have a gaffer, key grip, DP of course, VFX supervisor, and hair and makeup show up quite regularly, depending on the caliber of the stars that we have. So if we have really big actors, then you have 2-3 people. If it was but just because they want to see the best monitors, which, by the way, happen to be Sony.
And then if we go one level below about your experience, what kind of camera have you been using? What kind of workflow have you been testing? How do you feel the evolution of the technology?
Recently we've been working a lot with the Sony Venice, but every project in a way is different. It's when it's not different and it's a copy and paste from another one, it's kind of boring. We always try to make it interesting, even if we use the same camera, we add elements or we change lenses. We want to spice it up a little bit. When I say we, I mean the DP, myself, the camera assistants, even the first AC is a very important position, and there's a collaboration with him. He just doesn't stay in the tent. So we are always with the walkie talking back and forward, Okay.
And how do you cope when you have multi-camera shooting, which are not necessarily the same model? So for example, in Sony, we have the Cine line, which starts with the small FX3 and then goes up to the Venice. Have you been experimenting, combining these cameras?
Absolutely. So before the Sony Venice came out and the FX3 came out, we were working either with other Sonys or other cameras, and it was always a matter of picking the best C, D camera for specific specialty shots. Whether it's a drone shot or it's underwater, we had to pair different cameras, different makers. And that was the not terrible part, but that was the tricky part because they have to match ultimately unless it's a completely different look. And it was hard with different makers to make it look the same. It's not impossible, but it's harder. And so with the Sony evolution of the legacy products, what happened is that we were able to use a Venice as a main camera and then use FX3 as a specialty camera and sometime as a main camera for some shots. And the color space is exactly the same. But going back to the cameras like FX3 and even the smaller, the RX0 Mark II,
very small one, yeah.
Those are cameras that we used and we use a lot. All together on big projects. The result is that some of those shots went even in the trailer, and of course nobody knew about it because they look great. So I think that Sony really offers the best ecosystem, or one of the best ecosystems, so that we have no excuses not to do well.
And you mentioned briefly about the very important tool for the IT, which is the monitor.
Yes.
What are you looking for today in a modern monitor?
I have a lot to say about that.
And of course, I'm going to bring you into this whole HDR story. So it's important we get your
I'm in the market for a new monitor. So we're about to get to a point in which the consumer monitors are as good, if not better, than what we have access production-wise, at a not prohibitive price, I feel like we're at a turning point in which we really need to push the accelerator. The manufacturers have to really release the best panel for a good price and not make it extremely expensive. I personally think that HDR is happening, and it has happened for quite some time. Right now, it's happening more on the post-production side, so we don't necessarily need to show HDR on set, and it all goes along with where do you see HDR? But definitely HDR and 4K are the two holy grails.
Can I ask you a bit a difficult one, but what is your opinion regarding HDR for the large screen, for the theater?
Oh, it's great. I have an awesome opinion of HDR from every standpoint.
I'm asking because, of course, we can understand that from a TV set perspective at home with let's say a very luminous environment, and with emissive display, like the panel, makes sense, it's highly controlled.
You're talking about projection versus...
Yeah, projection in a dark room is not the same, and the perspective of interpreting the contrast is not the same. That's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen lots of demos of the latest and the greatest in HDR, both projection and also your Sony incredible displays are mind-blowing.
The crystal LED, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I honestly think that even the theater with the current HDR capabilities is still amazing. The reason why is because not only you can see the highlights better and the range is so much bigger, but also because the blacks are incredibly black. And that's one of the things of the theater that really was lacking is the blacks. Yeah. The light was always going through, whether it was film or DLP. So in a dark theater, you can still see the image on the screen, and being able to project no light, if you want, which happens with the latest projection technology, is incredible. A screening that I went to where they were showing pretty much a starry sky from a spaceship. So you could see, it was totally CGI, pretty much, of course. But it was hundreds and hundreds of stars. And we saw that on a SDR projection, and we could see 50 stars, maybe, the brightest ones. And it was fun, it was cool, it was amazing. Then when they switched to HDR, we were able to see thousands stars because the sky was completely black. In HDR, you can see the stars like you would do on a real, like if you're in the middle of the desert, you look up and you see maybe hundreds, maybe millions of stars. If that sky you're looking up is gray, you're gonna miss 50% of those or 70% of those. What it brings on the table, HDR, is so massive and so helpful that we really can't go against that technology. And I'm afraid sometimes that it might be too bright, actually.
What would be, because this is very, I don't want to say controversial, but this is a touchy topic, the HDR management, the on-set.
Sure.
Why would do a project in HDR, yes, no, etc. How you would advise DIT and also in their relation with DOP to address this topic. How people get trained, how people get experienced about how to cope intelligently into using HDR for creative purpose.
Some people are now completely aware of the potential of HDR. They can be professionals, they can be production companies. They quite don't know. They're probably watching all their shows on HDR, but they quite don't see the potential, or they leave it to the post-production. There are standards in the making as far as what should be the color pipeline, the workflow for HDR projects. Unfortunately, not that many are completely HDR. So there's always a mix of HDR and SDR, which means that you want to make everyone happy. So the director is watching SDR, and then two people are watching HDR. And to me, that's a huge compromise, because you're trying to make two things out and to kill two birds with a stone, and that it's not really working great. I think that the next step is to actually do HDR from start to finish. And one of the elements is the monitor. There's not that many productions that can afford an HDR pipeline on set. And when you do it, you have to do it right. You can't just have a monitor HDR and then all the other SDR and then maybe one camera HDR and the other one else there. It actually, in my opinion, makes it worse, because the capability of doing HDR in post is there and it's great. So to force it in production and not being able to do it right. So you need the tools which you guys offer, you need the money to pay for all this system.
And what about the experience? Because I was reflecting on a TV show I saw with the same DOP on the 2 seasons.
Okay.
The first season is in HDR.
Okay.
So. Okay. The second is in HDR. Brilliant. Both are on HDR, but you could see the evolution.
Interesting.
Which, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but is definitely based on the experience of someone that has been pre-producing, lighting, shooting, grading, seeing the result, and then going to the next step with an iteration to understand where it's going to bring value, where it's going to add
absolutely
a creative element in the cinematography that will touch the viewer, which I was. And
so you're saying that the HDR was not just a technical improvement, but it was bringing something to the story?
It was definitely bringing some density and some power to some, a very large scene with a high backlight, where you could see the detail and the facial expression of the people in the dark.
Right.
Which bring a kind of atmosphere that was never known and never felt in this kind of show.
But that's, I think what you're bringing up, it's like the goal, the ultimate goal, because all these tools that we have, all this experience and everything has to bring something to the story.
I could feel that there was a step up, that there was a cycle that has been done.
Maybe the first season was a rehearsal for just a rehearsal for the second.
That was a bit the sense of my question about how you cope, how you accompany the DOP in this part that is half creative, half technical, not so easy to apprehend.
Most of the the OPs, as you guys call it, we call it DPs in Europe, they call it DOP, it's fine, it's the same. They know the potential, most of them know, and they know also the technical aspects of it, so they already are aware of what the potential could be. The only thing is that I think they need to see it too, because there's a lot of confidence that when you push the envelope so far, at the same time you want to deliver. It's good to be brave and do crazy shots and stretch the dynamic range, even like shooting, as you said, backlit and whatnot. But there's also an element of risk when you do that, right? And so if you put the DP in the position of maybe see it and believe it and know that he can get it, that's... because even with film, there was an element of magic and unexpected. Like you have to wait until the film is developed and printed to know really what happened. And the DP was the only one that kind of knew what was happening. Most of the time, the magic, wizard. With digital, the DPs that I work with don't barely look at the dailies. I do, because I want to make sure that they match what we're doing, but they don't have time. It's such short turnaround, and so you have to trust what you're looking on set. So there's that element of creativity and like pushing the envelope, but you need to be able to know that you got the shot, and that's when the right monitor, the right camera, they make it happen.
And talking about this collaboration on set and wish of the crew and everyone to have visibility on set, immediate feeling and result. What is your experience and also opinion regarding this direction that we see growing of the LED walls in combination or in opposition of the green screen shooting? How do you see this evolution of the technology?
It's good. Whatever can help the performance, in my opinion, and it does mainly help the performance to an extent. Technically speaking, it's good, but the green screen would achieve better, maybe, or same or better results if you're looking at the final result. But what happens with this, with the LED screen, is that there's more element of real for the actors and the filmmakers to base their experience on set. And that's pretty huge, because I did work on many projects in which it was insane. Like literally the actors were full of markers and were wearing suits, and they were on a blue set. So I mean, I was blown away by like how they could even think that it was real. So anything that can help that, I think it's very important for the filmmakers in the process. Then the final result is debatable. Like it can be comparable to other results, you know.
Could you share with us the way that you've been working on one of your latest production with the camera? What are the technological elements that you use the most and how you've been dealing with?
Absolutely. I've been working on projects with the Sony Venice for a few years now, and there are some clear advantages of using this camera. The full frame, the dual sensitivity, the internal NDs are extremely important features. The new Venice 2 is even more groundbreaking. I had the chance to test side by side the Venice 2, and it pushes the image quality even further with the higher definition, resolution, and higher sensitivity, so less noise even. The camera is very production friendly, and I say that because when it comes to the productions that I work on, it has to do a lot with the speed of execution. There cannot be delays for camera, and there are. And so the Venice has internal NDs that really let you flip the wheel and change and adjust the depth of field as you please, or the exposure, very fast. We can do it remotely, so I can do it from my tent, which is great. I can set up all the cameras. When you change the ND, you have to tell, on other cameras, you have to tell the first assistant, and they have to pull it out of the pouch and put it in the matte box, and the tray in the matte box. So the whole thing takes a little bit. Even the best ones, they do it fast, but they're still not immediate. From a color standpoint, it's a full spectrum NDIR filter. It's internal, so the two advantages is that there's no reflection, pretty much, and there's no color shift. So when those two things happen, you know you're getting the best image quality, whether you're clear, quote unquote, or clean, to a 2.4 NDs, and that's huge because sometimes we have two cameras with completely different NDs.
And in terms of data workflow?
Yes, so the compressed
SOCN and the volume of data you're
absolutely
managing,
yeah.
How do you cope with that? Yeah.
Oh no, that's great. The compressed raw, the XOCN. We depending on the project. I never shot LT. I always shot SD or XT. XT always for like VFX related CGI shots. SD is kind of more common. The lossless raw, quote unquote, is, in my opinion, the way to go. Reason why is because nobody wants to wait an hour at the end of the day to offload a huge amount of data with like from 4, 5, 6 cameras. It's just, I don't want to say unnecessary, but it's inconvenient. So we never had this issue with the Sony Venice.
Regarding all the Sony kits you've been using in the whole family of Venice, FX9, FX6, FX3, which is the latest one that you've been testing and using?
The FX3 is one of the cameras that we really fell in love with, and the reason why is because the form factor is so great. And we were using already the A7S Legacy before, until the 2. Then when the 3 came out and the FX3 came out, we were like, which one we should use? It wasn't even out yet, actually. So Sony Los Angeles sent to Virginia, where we were shooting this sizable, big show, an FX3 camera, I got a phone call. I was like, do you want to check it out? And so we got the camera on set via FedEx. We opened the box, the cardboard box. It was just a camera, a battery, and a lens. So we pulled it out, we set it up. And I knew that camera had potential before I saw that camera, so I was very excited to see it. But then what happened is that we ended up shooting some quick tests, and we got more than what we expected. So long story short, that night we ended up shooting a major scene of the movie with that camera. And the problem that we had is that we had only one battery. Because Sony didn't think we were going to do anything with that camera, but just taking a look at that. So we had the grip department to build a rig around it. We use a transmitter. It's a very elaborated handheld shot where one operator gives the camera to another operator, and through a window that breaks and then goes on the other side of a pharmacy counter. The whole thing was handheld, so we had to use internal stabilization and optical stabilization on the lens. But the funny thing is that we were shooting at 12,800. So it was a super dark scene, and we were able to shoot that and got that shot. Ever since, we used the FX3 on many projects. Pretty much all the projects that had Venice had an FX3, and you really have to look really carefully to really spot the difference. And honestly, if there is a perfect tool for a perfect shot, even if it's not exactly the best of the best, but delivers the image quality that you're looking for, that's what you're gonna go for. And that's what happens with the FX3, that we use it for specialty shots or for any time that we really need a crazy sensitivity, because even the Sony Venice 2 is amazingly fast, but the FX3 is out of this world. So it's always a pleasure to be able to play with new tools and see through the eyes of a sensor that is really groundbreaking.
The name comes from the fact that the design comes from Japan, but the aim is Hollywood. The aim is California. The name is big movie shooting.
Okay.
So when you're in Japan and you look across the ocean to Hollywood, first thing you land on is the Venice Beach.
Oh, interesting.
And that's why.
Okay.
The Venice Beach in LA. And
So it's not the Venice in Italy?
No, it's the Venice Beach of LA.
Yeah, but then they call the module Rialto.
We know it's the bridge in Venice, in Italy. And because it was a bridge between the sensor and the camera body.
Right. That was great, though. You had really great questions. Thank you very much.